Hey, this is Melisha and welcome to Flipped Coding. This is the place people come to learn web development after they've been through some of the online tutorials, but they want more detailed explanations of how this applies to real-world programming, or they're looking for more mentorship from a professional web developer. So, with that being said, let's get started with today's topic about how to use async JavaScript. So just so you know, this is going to be a quick kind of high-level overview about how async JavaScript works and some of the details in it. And you might hear my dogs playing and walking around in the background, so excuse them. But let's start. So, asynchronous programming basically means you're running multiple pieces of code at the same time without them necessarily waiting on each other. So you can think of programming like a highway, so to say. With synchronous programming, it would be like you're the 10th car in traffic trying to exit off of a one-lane highway. That's kind of what synchronous programming is like. Every car is dependent on how fast the first car gets off the highway. So, with asynchronous programming, it's like being on a multi-lane highway. So, you'll have people going slower than you, you'll have people going faster than you, some people will exit on the left, on the right, whatever. It's just, there's more flow and it's more efficient when you have multiple lanes instead of just one. That's kind of the difference between synchronous and asynchronous programming, and that's basically what async is. It means you're able to run multiple pieces of code at the same time without them interfering with each other. So with asynchronous JavaScript, I'm sure you've heard about promises. A promise is just an object that returns from an asynchronous function call. That's it. So the promise object will either come back with a completion or a failure, and if it comes back with a completion, it'll have the results that you're looking for. So if your function did some kind of database call and you're expecting some data back, it will be stored in the promised object results. That's what promises are in a nutshell. Promises are also the only venable objects in JavaScript. So what that means is when you get a result back from a promise, you can chain other promises onto it. So let's say you make a database call and it returns the value that you need. Well, you can go ahead and chain on the next promise that does an API call based on the data you got back. That's kind of what venable objects are good for. So some of you might have worked with jQuery and you've heard about the deferreds. A promise is really similar to a deferred, but we don't use deferreds or really jQuery very much anymore. So let's talk about the await keyword. Now this can only be used with asynchronous functions. You can't use the await keyword outside of an asynchronous function. I just want you to know that, understand it, and be clear about it. The await keyword can only be used inside of an asynchronous function. So the reason we do that is because when you use the await keyword, that's going to stop your program from running until that value in particular comes back. So until that asynchronous function that you're putting this await in front of returns its value, the code is stopped. So this is used a lot when you have to log in with a new user. You definitely want to make sure that it's the right user logging in. So you might do an asynchronous database call to check their credentials, but for the next call, you want to wait and make sure that you have the correct credentials from the previous asynchronous call. Hopefully I didn't lose you in that, but Just remember the await keyword is used in asynchronous function calls when you need a particular value to be returned before you continue running the code. Alright, so now you have a pretty good high-level overview of asynchronous JavaScript and promises. A couple of things you want to keep in mind for just real-world use. Asynchronous programming makes your code run a lot faster. So can you imagine if you had to wait for every little thing you do on a website to finish before you could do anything else? So you would have to wait for, let's say you search for something. So you searched for your username or something on the page, and now you're frozen until that database call comes back. You can't go anywhere else. You can't look at anything else on the same page. You are stuck until that database call comes back. With asynchronous programming, you don't have to freeze the entire program just for a certain chunk of code to come back. That's one great thing about async. It speeds up your applications a lot. And you'll see async programming used mostly with APIs and database calls because those run at various speeds. They're hosted on different servers. So this is one of the ways you can kind of control the flow of how things are happening. If you need more help learning asynchronous JavaScript or just JavaScript in general, go ahead and sign up for my class at flippedcoding.com. So not only do you get to learn all of the technical skills with web development, so the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, SQL, C#, all of that good stuff, you also get personal mentoring from me. So if you sign up for the premium class, we can do code reviews together. I can help make sure you're following best practices. I even do resume and cover letter reviews as a part of that mentoring portion of the class. So if you're interested, go sign up at flippedcoding.com and I'll see you next time.